I think for emerging companies like AI and like these open AI AGI stuff, I think for that for profit structure is just like so inevitable for them, so proud to oppose. But okay, firstly, several rebuttals to the first speaker of the proposition. Now, the first speaker of the proposition stems their case highly because like simply OpenAI is like another companies that relies on investor pressures to cause like reckless AI release, right? I think this is an assertion their panels. There's not manifestations that because they never prove like why non-profit boards are inherently less reckless or why investor interests always conflict with safety, because it's not always about that, right? It's just in these particular cases. In reality, highly advanced AI systems that AI, this open AI like tech companies is actually developing of is requires enormous computation models. They require like high databases, and this means that they require larger extractions of like resources, right? All of these require sustainable capital. So the question is rather what structure can sustain responsible AI development at the scale that AGI or this open tech AI development stuff it requires, and that's what the answer is for profit model, right? Okay, but okay. Secondly, on their characterization of for profit, they say that they claim that for profit structures are extractive because investors want fast exits and premature releases. I think this characterization is overly narrow and overly like hyperbole, because a for-profit structure does not mean like investors can control every kind of decision you made, or maybe like there's like a safety disappearing every time, or companies only pursue short-term gains. No, in fact, large-scale investors in frontier AI often prefer like these kinds of models because they have like long-term stability and reputation, which even encourages their financial stability and ethical mitigation even more. So even if OpenAI catastrophically fails, investors are still structurally incentivized towards sustainability and not merely speed. And only for-profit structure is going to do this. Now, but also flip, investor pressure can also improve accountability. Why? Because under purely non-profit structures, decisions are often concentrated in like insulated ideological ideas, or like in like diplomatic decisions, right? There is less external scrutiny that allows you to like empower more power into like having like these innovations that OpenAI like requires of. But in for-profit system, I think their investors demand predictability in the ways that unpredictability is even like an absolute thing. So this creates multiple external tax, and there's a paradox that commercialization can create broader accountability, which what we want in the opposition side of the house. But okay, um, moving on to my several points of my setup. I think, firstly, on the nature of companies, what does the nature of companies, especially OpenAI, like really being used for, right? I think AI companies like OpenAI that develops like AI or AGI system, I think it's very unique because it sits in the intersection between like the ethical mitigation of people and the workers, but also the way that it requires like high amount of databases, high amount of computational models, and this means that large resources to be extracted of, right? So this creates two things. I think frontier AI development is not just like a one-time development. I think it's a continuous race between each other. And if OpenAI did not do anything of it, they cannot stand as a company that frontiers the AI development in which is still emerging, right? But also B, I think organizations controlling frontier AI cannot survive purely on moral idealism, because the scale of resources that they have to deal with is just already too big for moral mitigations in our mortal mind can even comprehend. This is why external investments and monetization are even necessary from investors, from stakeholders, because that's what makes them like survive even more. Like okay, but also secondly, on terms of like for-profit structure, what is for-profit structure? I think they're not just like an unlimited great, but they reward innovation so much than like non-profit organizations who like more diplomatic, I think, or more bureaucratic, right? In emerging tech, this is very important because uncertainty is very high, especially if you are developing a large kind of like technology like AI, right? So it creates accountability you can hold on to, and that accountability is profit. That's how you sustain stakeholders and finance amount, right? But okay, I think then only problematize the status quo simply because they defend on the effect that ethical goals and financial sustainability is mutually exclusive, when it's in fact always intersects in any kind of companies you could talk about, right? Especially in this modern world. So okay, moving on to my arguments, I will prove to you first why transition towards for-profit structure is practically essential, but okay, secondly, why not transitioning then is not justified. Okay. So moving on to my first, why transition towards for-profit structure is practically essential. Contextualize their panels. The entire proposition case depends on the assumption that AI development can remain slow, it can remain cautious, it can remain idealistic while still competing at the frontier AGI development when it is not the case. That misunderstands the nature of AI itself, which requires enormous computational model or resources extraction. This is an industry where the cost of remaining competitive is unbelievably high. It's either like you do everything or you lost everything. That matters because why? Because their model creates the propositions model create a contradiction. They want OpenAI to remain globally influential enough to all of its users, to all of its people, to shape AGI safely, but simultaneously deny it the financial structure, the model of financial sustainability that they as frontier AI developer really needs of, right? Cap profit structure eventually discourages a large-scale investment because investors will tolerate risk only when upside exists. AGI development has massive uncertainty. It has long timelines. It has gigantic burn sites, right? So once returns are artificially limited, capital gradually moves elsewhere, and it's not about the profit of the AI itself. This creates three harms. A, ethical actors become weaker relative to reckless actors. If OpenAI cannot scale compute, hire top researchers or expand infrastructures quickly enough, then less safety-oriented competitors will go inside the OpenAI and they will not progress as much as what maybe like Manus or other kinds of like AI companies. But also B, safety itself becomes harder to farm because proposition frames commercialization as the enemy of safety simply because of that, like things like alignment testing, things like I don't know, supervised unsupervised learning, they all require sustained funding and world-class researchers, which only can be sustained more concisely and more concretely with our model. So why is transition therefore justified? The move toward a PBC structure solves this because it creates a balance between the need for commercial sustainability and the need and the public interest obligations, right? The crucial point is that a PBC is not pure shareholder capitalism. Legally, it still allows companies to pursue broader public interest goals rather than maximizing profit alone. The real world case is like, look at industries like medicine industry or pharmaceutical industries, right? The reason large-scale medical innovation happens is not because companies are purely charitable. It is because profit structure allows enormous investment in high-risk researches that where uncertainty is highly relies on, right? How do you weigh this? I think opposition better fulfills even proposition's own goal, not only the status quo. Why? Because proposition cares about safe and beneficial AI, but safe AI requires resources, it requires competitiveness, and it requires the dangerous AI to be found first before it going to be like being mitigated super and now to be it become like a safe AI, right? Which is what is happening in the world right now. A morally pure but strategically irrelevant OpenAI cannot shape global AI development and therefore cannot be a frontier AI companies, and that's why you should buy opposition. Thank you.